On today's episode, we are going to be adding a camera to our 3D printer so we can monitor our prints in real time. Today's installation will be applicable for any 3D printer currently running Klipper firmware, and the service we're going to be using to install and configure the camera is called Crowsnest. Now, Crowsnest is simple to install, easy to understand, and it's extremely user-friendly. And not only can we install a single camera, we're going to be able to install multiple cameras. And here we go. Folks, welcome to the channel. I am Leo of Prince Leo 3D. Thank you so much for joining me. And today we're going to be exploring our Klipper setups on our 3D printers, and we'll be adding an additional feature to our remote access, the ability to watch our 3D printer from our house, apartment, or wherever you're able to connect to your 3D printer using Klipper. Now, when we installed Klipper on our 3D printers, it was for a number of reasons: print quality performance, print speed performance, and remote control of our 3D printer. Being able to control your 3D printer is one thing, but being able to watch it is certainly another. You can open up a web page on your phone or on your PC, and you'll be able to watch a live streaming view of what exactly is happening on your 3D printer. And that really brings this whole setup to another level. And having this camera will open up more opportunities for you. You can create stunning time lapses, which helps people outside of the 3D printing world kind of appreciate what goes on and spread the word about what you're doing, and maybe open your hobby up to family and friends. It broadens the horizons of services we can use, like one called Telegram, which will allow you access to your 3D printer from anywhere where you have an internet connection. And you can ask for status updates and get a picture back to you of exactly what's happening on your build plate. And the webcam is one thing that kind of ties it all together, because you can watch now in real time. You're going to be able to simply open up a web page on your phone and see exactly how your print is doing. Now, the service we're using today is called Crowsnest. It is fairly new, and if you looked at it, you would think maybe it's built only for Mainsail, the front-end Mainsail, but it certainly is not. You can use this on Mainsail as well as Fluid. Now, in most of these setups, I'm only going to be adding a simple webcam. I'm not going to be adding anything super high-end, and you'll see different levels of webcam are going to give you different results. I have a Logitech Brio that I used to use for filming some of these videos. It's a high-end webcam. It gives me extremely crisp results. Is it necessary? That's based on your application. If you're just monitoring your prints to make sure nothing is going wrong, a simple $8 webcam that you can find on sale on Amazon is going to perfectly fit the bill for you. Now, while this installation can work for any 3D printer, the host device that is running Klipper, that will determine if you are able to actually run a camera or multiple cameras. For instance, I have a Raspberry Pi Zero W on a few of my printers, and unfortunately, that doesn't quite have enough processing power to not only run Klipper, but also a webcam. Devices like the Innovato Quadro, a Raspberry Pi 3, a Raspberry Pi 4 are all more than capable of running a webcam and your Klipper setup simultaneously. So you know why you want a camera on your 3D printer, so you can watch what's going on while you're not standing right in front of it. Let's find out how to actually do it. Let's get to the installation using the Crowsnest service. And that starts by SSHing into our host device. And for me, it's a Raspberry Pi 3. The first step in our process is to SSH into our MCU, and I'm using Putty to do so, which is a free download. Once you're at your terminal line, you're going to paste in this block of commands and then hit enter to execute, which will clone the Crowsnest GitHub repository and begin to download and install all the necessary pieces of Crowsnest. If you're wondering where we found these commands, you can venture to the Crowsnest GitHub yourself. Excellent documentation and some sample configurations to find there. After the installation is complete, you will need to reboot your MCU. Crowsnest will ask you to do so at the end, so when prompted, select yes. At this point, Crowsnest has installed. We've rebooted our Klipper host device. You're going to power on your 3D printer, and then you're going to plug your webcam into the host device. Once your MCU has finished rebooting, you can jump back onto your front end, and we can navigate to the configuration tab. And now under this configuration tab, a new file should appear, crowsnest.conf. And if we open that file up, this is the configuration file for our cameras. If for some reason you open this configuration file and crowsnest.conf was not here, there are further steps you're going to need to take in order to fix this problem. So for all those users where Crowsnest did populate, please skip to the chapter Crowsnest Configuration. For everyone else, we're going to stay tuned and troubleshoot exactly what this issue is. To begin troubleshooting, we are going to SSH into our MCU using WinSCP. We're using WinSCP because the user interface is a little more robust and will help me clearly explain exactly what the issue is. And it's also a very convenient way to fix this problem. I enter the IP address of my Klipper setup, then I can pre-insert the username and password. Once it opens up, the right side of the partition are all files and folders local to my MCU, while the left side is files and folders local to the computer that I'm on currently. For this, we're going to concentrate only on the right side of the partition, which is our MCU. During our initial installation of Klipper, we needed to install three main parts: Klipper itself, Moonraker, and our front end. Moonraker is the communication intermediary between us on our front end and Klipper, and recently Moonraker went through a major change. The problem is Moonraker has changed where it stores its configuration files. Previously, Klipper_config housed all your configuration files, and they are right here. These files would be the same if you went on your front end and went right here to your configuration panel. These are the same files. They are editable and changeable from both locations. However, Moonraker has made a change to this structure. It's no longer using this folder as its main configuration folder. It's using a folder it's named printer data or printer_data. This is now the new folder that will house all your configurations. And Crowsnest has adopted that new file structure. So that means Crowsnest is going to populate its files within this folder. So you'll see right here, here is that Crowsnest configuration file. This is the one that did not populate for us because it's placing it in a folder we're not looking in. Who is this going to affect? Anyone that has an older version of Klipper and Mainsail. If you have a single instance of Klipper, you can find that out by going into printer data and config. If you have no other files here, you're using an older version. Or anyone that's using multiple instances of Klipper. This MCU right now is set up for multiple instances, and you'll see these are their names: printer1 data, printer2 data. That means all my configuration files are being housed in these two folders, but Crowsnest will still be looking in this printer data folder. That means I'm never going to be able to edit my configuration. So what we need to do is tell Crowsnest where to look. To do that, we go into printer data and then systemd. Right here, we should have only a single file, crowsnest.env. Double click it to open it, and in that file is a single line. And this is showing us the file path where Crowsnest is looking for its configuration file. Home, pi, printer data, then config, and then there is that configuration file. So we need to make a change to this based on your setup. If you're using that older version of Klipper and Moonraker, this is how you're going to want it to look. If you're using an older version of Klipper and Moonraker but multiple instances, then this is how you're going to want it to look. If you're using multiple instances of Klipper, but you're using the more updated Klipper and Moonraker version, then you're going to want it to look just like this. On the printer we're using right now, I am using multiple instances, and it has been updated, so this is the correct file path I want to use. I'm going to save it by clicking on the file in the top left, and then I can close it out. Now, I can go back one folder. I'm still in printer data. Double click to config, open up the configuration folder. I want to copy everything in here because we're going to use this in the correct file path. I copy that, I close it down, and then I'm going to open up my front end. Under the configuration tab, I find the plus sign, I click it, and I'm going to add file. It needs to be named exactly crowsnest.conf. Hit enter to save it. And now we're going to open it. And I'm going to paste in everything we copied from the configuration file. And now I can save and restart. And now Crowsnest will be looking at the correct configuration file for me, which is the one we just created right here. It's looking through the correct folder pathway to this file. So now if I need to make any edits or changes, I can do it right here from the front end. We're now all back on the same page, and we're going to take a look at this configuration file in detail. And when I say in detail, I'm being a little overzealous. There's not much going on, and that's a good thing. The first thing I want to talk about is this save and restart button. This is not restarting your firmware. It's actually restarting the Crowsnest service. So every time we make a change to the configuration file, we need to make sure that we use the save and restart feature, because that's going to restart our Crowsnest service, and then we'll update our parameters. So make sure that when you do make a change to crowsnest.configuration, you are using the save and restart. Now let's look at the configuration file itself. The upper portion is all commented out information to just give you some helpful tips, especially if you're using multiple cameras. The two sections we're concerned about are labeled Crowsnest and Cam1. Under Crowsnest, our log path. If Crowsnest populated for you in configuration, then you can leave this log path just as it is. If you are a user that did have to make some changes to get Crowsnest configuration to show up, you will need to change this as well. For my users that are using an older Klipper setup, whether single or multi-instance, this is the file path you'll want to insert. And for my users that are using an updated Klipper and moonraker setup, but multiple instances, this is the file path you'll want to use. And what this does is make it so our crowsnest.log is located right here under our configuration tab. Log level. This controls the amount of information that will be available in the logs, and there are three options: quiet, verbose, and debug. Quiet is the least amount of information, and debug is the most amount of information. Under that, delete log false. If this is set to true, your log will be deleted every time Klipper restarts. You want these logs to hang around for a little bit. They're always good for troubleshooting, so I like to keep this false. Under that, cam1. This is our first camera, and this name can be changed. The only thing that needs to stay the same is the CAM and a space. After the space, I can call this whatever I want. Under that, mode, you have two options: MJPG and RTSP. Highly recommend you stick to MJPG. Under that is the port. If you are using a single camera, the port will be 8080. Every additional camera will increment 1. Next, we have device, and this is probably the most important aspect of this configuration. This is the address of the camera that is plugged into your host device. Now, Crowsnest does a great job of boiling that address down to video 0 for the first camera. So it's likely you might not even have to change this. But if at the end of this tutorial you still have no camera feed, then this is likely the problem, and we will troubleshoot it together. It is the last section of this video, troubleshooting configuration, and that section is also important for any users that are going to hook up multiple cameras. Resolution and max FPS, these are self-explanatory, and they're based on the webcam you're using. The resolution is whatever the resolution of the webcam can maintain, and the max FPS is also based on the parameters of your given webcam. Feel free to mess around with these and try and get the best quality picture you can. Now, we are still not working quite yet. We are ready to get started, but we just need to do one final step. We need to add the camera section to the home screen of our front end. I go down to the settings cogwheel. I click on it, and then under that subheading, I find cameras. Camera section is right here. I click add camera. The name does not need to coincide with the configuration name. This is just for your own personal identification. And then that's all you need to do. Everything else will be handled in the configuration file. Click add. You'll see it has been added right here. And if we go to the home screen, you'll see a camera section has been added. And there we go. We are already capturing an image. If your camera stream doesn't start up as quickly as it did, you can toggle the camera drop down button a few times. I have noticed that sometimes it won't populate immediately until I toggle this button up and down. As for setting up a single camera, that is it. You are finished. If you're having trouble with this camera, you can continue forward with this video as there is troubleshooting sections, or if you're considering hooking up multiple cameras. Other than that, you are finished and you can skip to the outro. If your camera stream has not started at all, now is the time to go back into crowsnest.configuration and start determining what the correct device address is, because it's likely that is the cause. A quick fix would be to guess the video number. You could change video 0 to video 1, restart the Crowsnest service, and see if your camera stream begins to operate. If you want to take the guesswork out of it and find out what the exact address is, there are two ways to go about it. The first is you can check the crowsnest.log. Within the log, it will show you the available devices that are trying to connect with Crowsnest. And right here you can see I have one available device. Below that, it shows me the address, and then it shows that Crowsnest has shortened it to dev video 0. So I could use either of these, either dev video 0 or the full address. If I wanted to use that full address, I would just go back into the configuration file and paste it in. Now, if for some reason you're having a hard time with the logs or it's not really working for you, we can always SSH into the host device and get the address directly from there. I enter this line, I hit enter to execute, and the return will be the address of our camera. Now, even though I have a single camera, it will return multiple addresses. You want to go all the way to the end of the line and look for index 0. That's the address you want to copy. After I copy that address, I can go back to the configuration file and paste it in next to device. If you have multiple cameras, it's possible you can run into another issue. They may have the same address if they're, for instance, both Logitech cameras. If that's the case, you're going to run this line. This will give the address based on the actual USB port that the camera is plugged into. Again, there'll be multiple addresses. For each camera, find the line ending in index 0, copy that address, and you can paste it into your configuration file. And again, after you made any of these changes to the configuration file, make sure to hit the save and restart button at top. Now let's add another camera. So right here we have a single camera working. I have an additional webcam plugged in to my Raspberry Pi 3, and I want to now get two cameras on this one printer. So I can go to my configuration tab, open up the Crowsnest configuration file, and all I'm going to do is copy the first camera section I have, and I'm going to paste it right here below it, and I'm going to make a few changes. First, I'm going to change the name. I'm going to call it Logitech 2 because my second camera is also Logitech. Then I'm going to increase the port. This port is going to be 8081. For the device ID, I'm going to have to figure that out. As for the resolution and for the max frames, I'm going to keep that as is. In order to find the device, I'm going to SSH into the host device, and I'm going to run the by ID line. The return yielded 6 results, 4 entries from the Logitech Brio, which you've already used, and the top 2 results are from the new webcam. Again, you're going to want to find the entry with index 0 at the end, and this time, instead of using the full address, I'm going to use what Crowsnest has whittled it down to, which is video 4. So I can go back into my crowsnest.conf file, and under device, change it to video 4. Then I'm going to save and restart. Now I need to do the same thing I did for our first camera, which is add another camera to our home page. I go to the settings gear icon, and then I click cameras, and I'm going to add another camera, and there will be something we need to change this time. We're going to add a name, and now under camera URL, our first webcam was fine to leave like this, but for each additional camera, we need to change it. The second camera becomes webcam 2. If we added the third camera, that would be 3, the fourth would be 4. This is our second camera, so it's webcam 2. I click add, and then I go to my home page where the new camera has been added, and our second camera is already up and running. Now, besides having 2 cameras pointed at a single printer, this sort of setup works if you have multi-instances of Klipper, where one camera is looking at printer A, and the second camera would be looking at printer B. Now, of course, you're only going to have one configuration file for both those cameras, just like we do now, and you're only going to have it in one of your printer's front ends. So you'll have to go there to adjust the settings for each of those cameras. If you ever get that feeling that someone might be watching you, now you know how your 3D printer feels because you'll be watching it at any time. You have now successfully hooked up a camera to monitor your 3D printer. Give yourself a pat on the back. This is just another Klipper video that we're adding to our ever-growing collection of Klipper-based videos. We're trying to get our 3D printers as tuned up as possible while using Klipper firmware. Upcoming, we have a pressure advanced video as well as a resonance compensation, also known as input shaping video. But next, actually tonight, I will be filming the Dual Z video by Kevin, aka Sam. All the parts are finally here. I'm going to be putting it together tonight, filming that, and hopefully having that out somewhere in the next couple of weeks because that's an awesome modification. It's going to give us a Dual Z belt, and not only is it going to help performance, especially if you're doing some heavy Z hopping while moving at really high speeds, but it's also going to give us a little bit of flair to our 3D printing, and we're going to be able to add some character to it. So I love that setup. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, join the Discord. All we ever want to do is help people get 3D printing and get better at 3D printing. This hobby is amazing. It offers you so many skills to be helping people, whether it's making toys for Christmas or Hanukkah or some other holiday, finding a present that you can 3D print and give to someone for their birthday, or whether you're fixing real life problems in your house, in your life, or helping some other people. 3D printing is an awesome avenue to explore what we can do with our creative side We can think of something, we can see something in a virtual world, and then we watch it come to life. It is so amazing. So the more people we can get on board and up and running, the better. If you like this video, you want to see more, please subscribe. You can hit the thumbs up button. All those things help. I love making these videos. I want to continue to make these videos. I'm not going to stop if you don't subscribe, but it definitely helps a little bit. It makes me think that I might be doing this right. So thank you all for subscribing, for liking, for commenting. Anything you're doing, if you've been watching this video and you're seeing me talk right now, thank you so much. I honestly mean that. And until next time, boys, girls, everybody else, keep on printing.